Okay. Hello, friends. The delay kills me, but that's okay. Right. So, tonight we're going to talk about the differences between sectional beaming and using a plane beam. And we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons. And the first thing I wanted to mention, though, is that I have a bias. I'm going to try. I was thinking through a lot of stuff today. I'm going to try and be impartial, but I'm just going to let you know right off the bat that I have a bias. I definitely prefer sectional beaming. So we're going to start at that place. The second thing I want to say is that I really hope to have some lively conversation. I'm hoping to hear what you guys have to say. I'd like you to mention it in the comments, what your feelings are, what you prefer. I feel like the best way to really flesh this out is to just have lots of conversation around it. Hi, Kim. Hi, Lori. So, like I said, I definitely have a bias. I prefer sectional, but there are pros and cons. So I wrote out a few. I don't know. Do you want me to talk about? Okay, I'll just start from the beginning. So, what is a sectional beam? Cece girl, you're here. Yay. Hi. So, a sectional beam is like a plane beam, but it has little rakes. I should have brought some little pegs up. So it's got little pegs at either 1-inch sections or 2-inch sections, or some of them, like my AVL beams, I can customize them. I can pop them in and out. I have done 3-inch sections before. I typically leave it at 2-inch sections. So that's my preferred way, is with 2-inch sectionings. Hi, June. Hi, Michelle. Yay, so many people here. So I prefer to do 2-inch sections, but there are pros and cons even to that. Okay, so here's the thing. When you're using a sectional beam, there are 8 million different ways to do every single step of weaving. So I can only speak to you about basically what I do or how I do it. Although, I'm well aware of different methods and I've used different methods in the past, but what I like to do is when I'm beaming sectionally, I like to have as many cones as I need. So if I'm doing 24 ends per inch and I'm doing a 2-inch section, I want to have 48 cones of yarn. So I'll have a cone rack and I'll wind right onto the beam with those 24 cones. And that's ideal for me. It's super fast. It's really easy to go bang, 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 and just beam a warp. Or 48 cones. I have 48 cones on, like it's just fast. So, but you need to consider the expense of 48 cones of yarn. Do you need that much yarn? That's a negative for some people. If you're not, production weaver like I am, you may not need that many, or maybe you need different colors. And so, how many cones of each color do you want? And do you want to change the color? If you're changing the color from the beginning to the end, then you need lots and lots and lots of cones, right? So if I were changing a lot of colors, I would probably want to do 1-inch sections, so I don't need quite as many of each cone of yarn. But, you just have to beam each section. It takes twice as long in that case. Like I said, there's pros and cons. I'm going to see what Michelle has to say. You started with a plain beam with your first 3 looms. You got your AVL, which you bought used, and it came with a sectional beam only. And Cecilia from the dairy says she's only ever used sectional. Right. So, Michelle, you've tried both. Which did you prefer? I think that it comes down to you're either going to spend money or time, right? And if you're a production weaver in particular and you're doing a lot, you're going to go through that yarn anyway. So you're going to ultimately, maybe not in that month, spend that money, but over the course of a few months, you will have spent that much money on yarn. So my way of looking at it is I'm going to be spending that money on the yarn anyways. I may as well work as quickly as I can, because the faster I work, the more money I can make, right? It makes sense to me. So that's why I love to do 2-inch sections. Now, in my particular case, I typically use all white yarn and then I dye it. So I'm not actually beaming it straight onto my beam. I measure it onto a Swift, or not a Swift, a skein winder. It looks just like a Swift, but it's a vertical Swift instead of a horizontal, what do you call those, umbrella Swift. It's not like an umbrella Swift. So then I measure it that way. Then I dye it. Then I go back and beam it. In that case, then I use the Swift. So you use different equipment. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about. You would use different equipment than a plane beam, right? If you have a plane beam, you need a warping board or a warping mill, and that's about it, really. But if you're using a sectional, then you need at minimum a tension box. That would be in a bobbin rack and a tension box. Although I guess you could still measure, you could measure 1 inch or 2 inch sections on your warping mill or your warping board, but you would at least need a tension box. I prefer to go, a little more. I have a skein winder and a Swift. Let me just see what I've got here. You've never tried sectional warping? Yeah, it's quite different. Oh, and then you can only beam back to front. There's no beaming front to back when you're sectional beaming, right? So I got quite used to I used to beam front to back, and then I got a sectional warp, or sectional beam rather, and I only beam back to front. I've only done that for years and years and years now. At this point, I think I prefer the sectional. I did just get a warping square that I've not used yet. This will alleviate all the cones. Yeah, that's true. You don't need as many cones that way. You can use a warping. See, I had a warping wheel for a while, and I called it the torture wheel. I just didn't love it. I just did not love it. So I found it was easier. I don't mind having the cones of yarn. I found it easier than, it still takes quite a while when you're using a warping wheel or a warping square, but it's, I think, probably faster than a warping board. The benefit to me at the end of the day, besides the fact that it's faster, is you get nice even tension. And you can, of course, get nice even tension with a plane beam, but with a plane beam, it's a little more challenging, and there's lots of back and forth and back and forth. It doesn't suit my personality. I mean, you might love beaming your plane beam. I never did love it. I always felt like there had to be a better way. I tried all these different methods, and I never found one that was really, really comfortable and that I felt I always got good tension. I never reached that point. And then I got my sectional beam, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. So, I know for a fact that there's lots and lots and lots of people out there that have no problem getting beautiful tension on their plane beam, and they don't mind it. They've got a beautiful setup. I know there's people that use all kinds of things, a trapeze, and I don't know, I hear all the angel wings or something. I'm not even sure. The other thing is, when you're sectional beaming, you don't need a cross. I don't use a cross at all. I haven't used one in years. When I get to the end, when I go through my tension box, and so it's a nice 2 inch section, I put a spacer that Leclerc sells, these little plastic spacers. I tape a spacer onto the yarn, and so the yarn stays exactly in perfect order. It sticks to the tape. When I take off the spacer, the yarns are all exactly in order, no cross needed. It's perfect. I love it. That's another thing. So when you're using a plane beam, you need to use, sticks or cardboard or blind slats or something to keep the warp from squishing into itself, right? You don't need any of that with a sectional beam. Like I said, Leclerc sells little spacers that are intended for that purpose, but I have never found them necessary. In fact, I've tried using them, and they're 100% more trouble than they're worth for that purpose. I use them for other purposes. I use lots of them. I use them all the time, but never for the purpose they're actually intended for. I don't like them for that purpose myself. Oh, Tom May. Hi, Dad. Look at this. It's great. My dad's here. My daughter's here. Nice to see you. So now, Dad, I know that you have gone to a sectional, haven't you? You're using a sectional on the AVL that you've got there, right? How do you feel about it? Or how does Rosette like it? You tell me. Okay, so like I said, you need some different equipment, but I think the payoff is fair. I like having the extra equipment, the extra speed it gives me, the extra accuracy it gives me. But like I said, not everyone's going to feel that same way. I'm going to look. So I wrote down a list of pros and cons. So the pros, for me at least, for sectional is that it's faster. I get better tension. You weave back to front. You don't need a cross, and you don't need any separators. Those are pros to me. The con is that you do need extra equipment, and you probably will spend more money on yarn up front. But if you get a warping wheel or a warping square, like Kim, was it? Michelle said, then you don't need extra yarn really. You can do it the same way. Rosette likes sectional. Yeah, okay. And with a plain beam, you can go either front to back or back to front, whichever way you're more comfortable with. You can just use your warping board or your warping mill, and that's something that people generally start with. So it seems to me anyways, I shouldn't make blanket statements because I'm sure there are people who start out with a sectional warping beam. Especially, like I said, I've noticed in Quebec they use sectional warping beams a lot, and I'm sure that's the same way in different places in the world. For me, the con of a plain beam is just that it's slower, and I find it hard personally. I find it hard to get good even tension. Again, it's probably just me. I don't know, and you have to use a cross. I always found when I was threading my loom, when I had a plain beam, that I felt like I was tied like an umbilical cord to my loom. When I was threading, I was like, no, I'm not answering the door. I'm not answering the phone. Like, it's like an umbilical cord. Me and the loom are one now, and I can't move until I finish this threading. It's so not like that with a sectional. I feel freedom. I'm not tied to the loom. It's just easier for me. What have I got here? Oh, and I made a comment that a con was that you have to have something to separate your warp threads. I don't know. I'm sure people don't think of that as a con, but it's a struggle, right? Like I was always like, oh, I got these little sticks. I got to be popping them in, or I don't know. It was always something I was kind of a little bit worried about, just a little bit in the back of my head. Stupid question. Why don't you need a cross? So I'll try and see if I can. Okay, here's this little scarf I have. So if I run it through a tension box, so all the threads are all lined up nice and neat and flat and in order through the tension box. And when they come out the other end, of course, they're still nice and flat and neat. And so what I do is I take a piece of tape and I tape them exactly in that order. I just put this is not working all that well, and I'm not even sure you can see. So I take the tape and I tape underneath. Well, actually, I put a little hard spacer underneath and I tape over the top. So then when I take the tape off, sorry, I don't take the tape off necessarily. What I'm saying is, sorry, I'm getting this all mixed up. I take the little spacer off the back, and then it's all nicely taped to the tape. All the threads are exactly in line, in order, and stuck individually. So they're in order. Why would I need a cross? My threads are already exactly how I want them. So then I can even just take them, I hold my hand, and I go through the heddle and grab the next one off the piece of tape. It's so fast. It's so fast to thread my heddles that way. Did that answer it? Is that clear? I know there's a delay here. I hate the delay. I wish it was just automatic. I'm just going to read the comments here. I haven't tried a warping square, by the way. I had a warping wheel, and I found that the little feet that come out would just get a little bent under tension, and then my edge threads would be narrower than my inside threads, so the tension wouldn't be right. It just was a problem. I just ordered yarn that I want to paint to weave pooling. I was told that if you use the sectional beam, that lines will show between the sections. Yes, they will if you beam. Okay, so if you, I've got you here. So if you measure your warp and then you dye it, and you're dyeing in 2-inch sections, each one is going to look like a 2-inch section. Like you'll see the lines between if you're not using the same color. What you can do, even if you're trying to make them similar, there will be lines. I can give you lots of examples. I can show you. If you're on Facebook hit me up. I'll send you examples before. So when I first started dyeing, that's exactly what happened. And you would see the lines, and I hated it. And when I look back on my old work where I didn't know about blending my sections together, oh, I hate looking back. I'm embarrassed by what I did back then. But I learned. So now what I do is I blend my 2-inch section, my other 2-inch section, I blend the edges of them together. And now you can't tell. I would be happy to send you lots of examples. They blend really nicely. So I take like, I would do, when I get towards the end of one section, I start pulling over threads from the next section. So I'll pull over one, and then 3 threads later, I'll pull over another one, 3 threads later, I'll pull over another one, then I'll go 2 threads, 1 thread, and then I go all the way into the new one, except I pull in some of the old thread, the old section. I call it old and new, but you know what I mean, one section. So some of this section is going into here, and then some of this section is going into there. So they get blended. And then there's no lines, and it looks beautiful. It's definitely way far superior. Looks a million times better. So you fully wrap each section on fully one at a time. Yes, a sectional, you beam one section at a time. So you take your 2-inch section and you beam that completely on. There's nothing else on, and then you tape that yarn up so that it doesn't flop all over the place. Then you move over 2 inches and you do the next section, and then you move over 2 inches and you do the next section, and then boom, they're all on before you know it. And it's nice even tension, all on, and it's pretty easy to get on. I have some videos about it. I can make more. In fact, I was thinking about doing that, but I definitely do have some videos showing it. I may have more shorts actually that show beaming. Okay, so you fully wrap each section. Lori, June, you are only working in 3-inch sections, smaller groups of threads to keep track of. Okay, CC girl, can't do that with a cross, eh? You can't do it with a cross. I don't even know how you would do a cross or what you would do with the cross when you had it. Like yeah, I don't think you can beam sectionally with a cross. I don't know how you would. There's probably a way, but I don't know how you would or why you would need to. So you could do a whole video on blending sections. That's true. I could do a whole video on blending sections. Actually, I have quite a technique, and I have it actually written out because, as you know, I've had a team working for me. I've had lots of people come through the door here that have worked for me. So I have these little charts, if you will, all written out on how to thread. If you're doing a 760 end warp, if you have a 720 end warp, if you have a 900 end warp, I do them all a little slightly bit differently. And it's, you know, I can kind of calculate it out in my head, but not everybody can do that. And it's because I have like a ton of experience doing it. But, you know, we just wrote them all up. Actually, my daughter Bella, she wrote these all up for me, and we laminated them, and you can write on them so that anybody who's threading the loom has a chart. It shows them exactly what to do so that nobody's getting confused or making a mistake. So I could definitely make a video about that. I could probably make those available. I'm trying to do something with I meant to talk to my partner about this today, but I wanted to do I want to have a place where you guys can get resources from me, where, you know, you just log in or whatever it is and you get resources. Like I can give drafts to you guys, and I can give you, you know, like the sectional, the blending the sections, that kind of stuff. Anyways, I'm going to talk to him about it further, but it's something I am working on for sure. You can't blend with a cross. Oh yeah, I guess that's true. You can't blend with a cross. I guess maybe you could still. I mean, you're just all I do is just it's hard to explain when I'm not sitting at my loom. I do need to make a full video to show how I tape on my sections to the back of my loom, and then I just reach through and grab the next section. And then I just, when I'm waiting to do some blending, I just tape. If I'm working on this section, I'll just tape it over here to grab the next one to start blending. I have a whole system in place. I'll make a video about it. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll make a video just to make it clear. It's really hard to verbalize it. And when I'm sitting at that loom, I can get the lighting right, and I think I can manage. Blending is a great idea. Would love to see your method. This also speaks to weaving without a cross. It is ingrained in us that threads cannot cross, but the truth be told, it's not the end of the world. Absolutely not. Threads can 100% cross. You don't want them like twisting around each other, but if one thread crosses, oh, I've had problems where I've, maybe broken a thread or something, but I had somehow like, I've had problems where there was some problem with the threading, and if I just took out a thread, then it made everything work. So now the warp's one thread short. That's fine. I've got a spare thread floating around. I don't care. But then I find there's another problem or a broken thread. I'll just pull that thread right on over all the way across the warp if I have to and use it. It's not the end of the world. You do not need to be married to a cross. Threads can cross. There are certain things in weaving you have to be super, super, super precise about, but having threads be 100% every single one straight and perfect, that's not one of the things you need to be. You need to be between the heddles and the fabric. That needs to be right. But between the back beam and the heddles, there's a little flexibility in there. There's a lot of flexibility in there, to be honest. Yeah, not the end of the world. Anyways, so I think that's everything I wanted to say about a cross. Unless if you guys have more questions about that, please throw them in. If you have more things to say, if you are really in love with your plain weave, let me know why. Like, I'm all ears. I'm all open to, if you have a really good method of beaming and getting really nice tension, I'd love to hear about it. I'm probably going to run out of time because of this, the delay, and by the time I hear your responses. But if you have something to say, maybe just quick make a note and I'll hang out and wait until you. But I answer every single comment. So if you miss saying something you wanted to say, put it on the replay. I will respond to your comment. I respond, like I said, to every single comment. I don't get that many. I can respond to them. Weavers are the most inventive people I know. Yeah, we get creative, right? I did want to give you a little announcement. It's not really an announcement, but tomorrow night I am going to have my little granddaughter here. She's 2.5. So she goes to bed pretty early. So I think I can still do my live, but it's probably going to be closer to 7:30 where I'm sure she's sleeping. If Cecilia's still here, she can confirm if that's a good time for me, because it's her daughter that I'm having. And little Rosemary's 2.5, and I love her to little itty bitty bits and pieces. She's so sweet. I wish I could have her on, but she needs to be in bed. And yeah, I think 7:30 tomorrow. She might be here for a few days, so I might be going to 7:30. And then on Monday, I have my annual guild Christmas meeting, so I may have to not do a live on Monday at all, period. But I also might be able to do it during the day. We'll see how it goes. I'll post it. If I'm going to do a live, I'll post it I usually try and post it ahead of time so that people can be prepared or know that I'm going to do it. You just saved me money because I was going to buy a plain beam for my AVL. I know I saw you say that earlier, Michelle. I thought, oh, that would be really, I actually have a plain beam for my AVL. I've never used it. I do have one though, but I've never used it. I actually like to have, again, I'm ridiculous, but I like to have lots of beams. I have 3 looms, and I think I have 5 1-yard sectional beams, because I like to know that if all my looms are full, I can still fill up more beams and have them ready to go, so that if one comes off a loom, there's one ready to go back on the loom. I'm not using them all like this. My production has really slowed down, so I'm not using that. I'm not that busy that I need to be doing that as much anymore, but I definitely did for a long time have, I'd always have a beam ready to go. So as soon as one warp came off, one warp would go back on, just like that. Okay, the dairies. If she doesn't nap, she can go to sleep even earlier. She's definitely sound asleep by 7:30. Okay, so we're on for tomorrow night for 7:30. And I guess that's it. I will meet you back here. I'll probably be in my studio because Rosemary will be sleeping here. So I'll be downstairs in my studio tomorrow night, but I look forward to seeing you there then. And bye for now.